Hey everyone, welcome to Gen X Marks the Spot. Here I am. This weekend I took about 90 minutes of my life and I watched the brand new prequel to Rosemary's Baby called Apartment 7A. It's streaming now on Paramount Plus, written by Natalie Erica James, Christian White, Skylar James. Produced by John Krasinski, Michael Bay, among others. Starring Ruth from Ozark, also known as Julia Gardner. Also co-starring the great Diane Wiest, Jim Sturgis, and Kevin McNally. Now, this is a direct prequel to the 1968 classic by Roman Polanski starring Mia Farrow and Ruth Gordon, Rosemary's Baby. Now, believe it or not, Rosemary's Baby is a franchise. There was a atrocious sequel in 1976 called Look What Happened to Rosemary's Baby. Would not recommend it because it'll make you want to claw your own eyes out, but they tried. So this is a reattempt to turn this into an actual franchise, though spare yourself that dreaded sequel. This is a good movie. I'm going to do the first part of it, no spoilers, and then I am going to get into some spoilers a little bit later, but I'll let you know when those begin. It's a good movie. It's a solid movie. I think they made the right choice making it direct to streaming on Paramount Plus instead of releasing it into the theaters, because I think it would have been very disappointing in the theaters. They nail the aesthetic of 1960s New York to a T. They recreate the Bradford building. They recreate all the things that we saw Mia Farrow go through. They recreated the setting perfectly. I got to give them A+ for that. The acting was great. Julia Garner steals everything that she's in. If you've ever seen Ozark or Inventing Anna, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Girl eats the lens. She is absolutely phenomenal. And she is portraying a character that we were introduced to in the original Rosemary's Baby. And that is the character of 𝗟𝗏 𝗪𝗏. She is the young lady that we're living with the Castavetes prior to Rosemary's predicament. She's the one that Rosemary has the conversation with in the laundry room. And they nail Julia Gardner mimicking the actress that played her in the original film to a T. So we get to see a little bit more of her story. And from there, it's essentially a retelling of Rosemary's Baby. Witch's coven that controls this building wants to bring the Antichrist or Satan's son. They never actually say Antichrist, but we know Satan's child into the world, and they prey upon young women to do it. We come to find out there was previous girls, so this is essentially Rosemary's Baby retold using a different character. And the only differences to me in this film are the differences that can be boiled down to simply differences between individuals. So that's what you're looking at. So we'll get into that a little bit more when I get into the plot. Also, Diane Wiest, I love her. She was the mom in Lost Boys. I absolutely love her. She's been, Edward Scissorhands. She is just a phenomenal actress. And I've heard a lot of people criticize her, saying she was doing a Ruth Gordon, who Ruth Gordon was legendary as Minnie in the original. Criticize her for just doing a Ruth Gordon impression. I didn't see it that way. I think she nailed the character. She nailed the mannerisms. She nailed the voice. I literally, anytime that I would forget I'm watching a prequel. I would think it was Ruth Gordon reincarnated. I mean, I think that was awesome. Also, they recreated Roman very well. There's even a glimpse of Guy and Rosemary in it. Not any dialogue from them, but you do get to see them in the building to let them know it is leading up to Rosemary's Baby. So essentially, I think it was a good movie. The main difference in plot to me is, of course, only the individual. We already know that this particular baby is not going to succeed because Terry is dead in early on in Rosemary's Baby. So we know that this child that they're trying to impregnate with her does not live. So we know that this attempt fails. We already knows what happens to this character, which will lead me into one of my main points. In addition, there's nothing wrong with that, but did we really need this sequel? And I can say full on, no, we didn't need this particular prequel. It didn't tell anything new about Rosemary's Baby. If you're going to do a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, I think give us the prequel that would actually tell us more about the lore. And in my opinion, that would be the story of the Mercados, or, Roman 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂. His name was an anagram. That was the whole thing. And he was actually the child of Adrian Mercado, the witch or the warlock that was killed or almost killed by religious people outside the Bradford building. I think seeing that story and seeing Stephen/Roman's story feeding into Minnie's story would be the prequel that I logically would go to, because that would tell us more about the lore. This really doesn't tell us any more about the lore. It's literally Rosemary's Baby with a different character. You just have different characters giving you the lore. Whereas in the original, it was Hutch, played by the awesome Maurice Evans, giving Rosemary the background on the building. In this one, you have a nun that is giving Terry the background. So other than that, it's a good movie. It's a good, solid movie, but it's not one that was needed. It's worth a watch, but you don't need it to understand Rosemary's Baby. And with that being said, I'm now going to head into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I would recommend pausing and going to watch the movie, then coming back. If you don't care or you've already seen the movie, continue on from here. So we have Terry. She's a young dancer that has recently been injured, and she's trying to come back. There's a musical being cast that she really wants to be a part of, but she has gotten addicted to painkillers. She ends up getting really, really unlucid on them and ends up passing out in front of the Bradford building. You have Minnie and Roman, the same two antagonists as from Rosemary's Baby, finding her, offering to basically take care of her and give her a vacant apartment that they took over for an investment, apartment 7A, hence the name. And so she ends up living there, as we knew that she would, because we met the character briefly in the original film. And so from there, you kind of see a lot of shenanigans, just like they did with Guy Woodhouse in the original Rosemary's Husband. They offer to get him acting jobs and to help him propel himself. They do the same for her. They introduce her to all these people that are either members of the coven or know about the coven or associated with the coven. And one of them is the guy that's casting and directing or producing a musical that Terry wants to be a part of. And she ends up meeting him. Whereas in Rosemary's Baby, they sort of drug Rosemary and through her husband, and she thinks she's pregnant with her husband's child. Also, Rosemary wanted a baby. They were trying to have a baby. In this one, Terry does not want a baby. But again, same thing. She's drugged, and they do the thing. And she thinks she had a one-night stand with this producer guy and thinks she's pregnant that way. Main difference there, Rosemary wanted to have a baby. Terry did not. So, whereas Rosemary's Baby was a slow burn psychological horror. You didn't know until the very end, when it all came tumbling down, that this was all supernatural and planned and that you were actually dealing with witches. Up until that point, everything that was happening to Rosemary could be chalked up to either mere coincidence or that she was literally having a mental break. You didn't know, because you could see how a rational person would think that she was having a mental break. So you didn't know what was going on. And I think that was the brilliance of both the novel and the original film, the great slow burn. And this one, they don't really have that option because we know what's going on. And so they kind of devolve the psychological fear into jump scares. We see the scene where the woman becomes pregnant with the devil's child in the original Rosemary's Baby. It's very dark. It's shifting just like a lucid fever dream would from one scene to another. Very dark. They're on a ship. It's weird. It's incorporating people that you know in real life. You've had one of those dreams where you definitely know the people in your dream, but you're not sure if it's real or a dream. Very dark. Very ominous, a lot of Catholic imagery, same here, but it's very dark and ominous. So again, in Rosemary's Baby, you're not sure if she's having a dream or if it's actually happening. In this movie, you know it's actually happening. She's the only one that thinks it's a dream, and it almost evolves into a jazzy musical number, which I think the contrast between the awfulness that's going on and the upbeat jazzy number is good. I see what they were going for there. I don't think it works. I made a comment. One of my notes was devil has jazz hands. It's just kind of weird. And the portrayal of the demon, whereas in Rosemary's Baby, a little more realistic, lizardy, which you might think a demon would look like. Here, he is jazz hands. He's like sparkly, almost like in Twilight, Edward, when he presents himself to the sun and starts sparkling. That's what it kind of reminded me of here. So a little chintzy on that, but still it achieves its purpose. And then from there, you start seeing her having issues with being in pain and not feeling quite right and feeling manipulated. Then the cheap jump scares kind of start. Anytime she thinks about the baby, she'll hallucinate or see like demon arms coming around her stomach. She'll see a face appear in her belly that's not human. Just really jumpy kind of scares. And then it builds toward the climax where she figures out what's going on. Now, the big difference here, again, major spoilers. The big difference here is where Rosemary kind of stumbles into it and then eventually acquiesces and becomes a mother to her child. Terry is not going down that way. She is going to take control. She tried to kill the baby herself by stabbing herself. She couldn't do that. She tried to have a procedure. Ended up the baby thwarted, or Satan thwarted that as well. So in the end, she pretends to acquiesce, and she ends up doing this great dance number to Be My Baby by the Ronettes, and throws herself out the window, hits the car, and they recreate the scene of Terry's death pretty accurately. And so that's the only way she can prevent this great evil and take control of her life. So this has definitely got themes of a woman taking control. So it's great, just like Rosemary's Babies did. She took control, but in a different way. So that's the big difference. And then of course, it feeds right into early on in Rosemary's Baby, and we know what happens after that. So I think they did a good job with what they had to work with. Again, I don't think this is the prequel that you needed to Rosemary's Baby. I think if you're going to do a prequel, you do the long game, and you could even maybe get one or two movies out of the history of the Mercado Coven, which I would be much more interested in seeing. Give us the lore, give us the background, let us see all those stories that we heard Hutch and the nun in this one tell, our protagonist. I think that is the prequel that we needed to Rosemary's Baby. Not this one, even though it's good. This could be a little side story, whereas this is, this could be the Rogue One of the Rosemary's Babies franchise. But I think the prequel is that it would be of the Mercados or the Castavetes, however you want to say it. Also, they recreate a lot of characters. Again, not only Roman and Minnie, but you have Dr. Saperstein played with really good accuracy. You have Laura Louise, who was the little clownish, almost goblin villain from the first one, and then you even get to see a background on Mrs. Gardenia, who was the owner, the deceased owner of the apartment that Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse rent in the original. You see her in this one. You realize she was, as we suspected, was an act because of the things in Rosemary's Baby, all the writing, you know, I can no longer be a part of this, all the stuff that Rosemary and Guy found. We see here, yes, she was an active member of the coven that changed her mind. And as a result was killed by members of the coven, actually by Terry. I won't go into all that, but she did try to stop the baby from being born, and that is how she ended up dead. So we do get to see that little bit of backstory. But for the most part, again, I think a much better angle would have been the coven's backstory, but this is good. I don't want to discount fabulous acting. You can't go wrong with Julia Garner and Diane Wiest. Great movie. It's worth 90 minutes of your time. It's not a classic, but it's a nice little movie. And I'm going to give it, out of 5 stars, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's a solid C+B- effort. It is probably one that I will rewatch. I probably during the month of October, when I do a lot of horror, even more horror than I normally do. Rosemary's Baby is a comfort movie to me during October. It's just one of those that I rewatch along with The Omen. I love religious horror. So I think I'll probably will rewatch this and then, of course, bookend it with the original Rosemary's Baby. Don't go anywhere near that sequel. If you do, I warned you. Anyway, that's all. I think it's worth a watch. And until next time, Gen X marks the spot. Out.